I mean, really, is there any chance that oil doesn't go higher from here if we're going to see retaliation? And of course, now we talk about the possible suspension of Nord Stream 1.
No, I mean, look, it is going to be heading higher. Obviously, it's never going to be in a straight line. Potentially, Iranian barrels could come back. U.S. is also talking to Venezuela about potentially removing some sanctions. We don't think it's quite there yet. But yes, of course, might get a few corrections on the way. But ultimately, this is headed way, way higher.
So what does that mean, Amrita, in terms of what we should be looking out for? Way, way higher is what, 185? Can we reach 200? And what happens to demand then?
I mean, I would say you need at least 150, if not higher, for a material slowdown in demand growth. And I think that's the big issue we have right now. In a post-pandemic kind of recovery phase, demand is growing pretty rapidly right now. And even at these price levels, we aren't seeing any kind of significant slowdown in demand. And the other issue is a lot of countries are actually bringing back subsidies because of such high prices. So consumers aren't fully seeing these prices either.
Why is Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus not stepping in?
I think it's a very complicated situation for them. Russia is ultimately a member of OPEC Plus, and if you think about it, I mean, this situation hasn't been created by them, and ultimately they also don't have a lot of spare capacity, something we've been talking about for some time. If Saudi Arabia and UAE, let's say they bring all of their spare capacity to the market right now, in the summer when demand could be even higher, what happens then? So they do have to manage this very, very carefully.
Amrita, what does it mean for longer term, first of all, of the viability of OPEC Plus? Do they actually stay as a group, or does it get dismantled?
We've had conflicts within member countries of OPEC Plus before. I mean, if you think about Iraq and Kuwait, Venezuela's been under sanctions, Iran's been under sanctions, but the group has been successful in navigating challenges like that in the past, and I don't think that's going to be any different this time around either.
Amrita, give me a sense of how possible it is for the EU to meet its target of, reducing Russian gas dependency by 80% this year. How feasible is that? It seems like it's almost impossible without the help further afield.
No, I don't think those numbers are realistic. And I think even the IEA came out and said that, of course, yes, you could reduce it, let's say, by about a third, but you will still need at least 100 BCM of gas for Europe as a whole from Russia. And I think any kind of numbers or any predictions that says we could get rid of Russian gas overnight is extremely optimistic. And where is this LNG going to come from? Asia has had a relatively warm winter, and that's why we've had the luxury of seeing some of these cargoes come to Europe. But after this crisis, Asia is going to absolutely bid cargoes away from Europe. So we simply just don't have that volume of supplies elsewhere available.
So what happens, actually, concretely? Is it all talk?
No, I mean, I think we are going to start to see rationing, and you've seen Germany, for instance, talk about that. Industry will need to reduce their intake of gas, and similarly, what we're talking about in oil. Supply rationing is going to be a pretty grim, but a reality potentially if we continue on this path, and that's the only way to balance this market. Again, it goes back to prices, and it goes back to how demand reacts rather than via higher supplies, because there just isn't any in either oil or gas.
Yeah. Amrita, is Russian oil increasingly becoming untouchable for traders? And who does Russia then sell it to?
Well, China is starting to buy Russian oil again. We've seen ESPO cargoes trade there. Discounted Urals cargoes are slowly heading there. It's the shipping concerns that have kept things slow moving east, and shipping rates are very, very high right now because of the war premium. India is open to buying Russian oil as well. So we do expect more intake of Russian oil in the east. But yeah, Europe is very reluctant. The pipeline is still flowing. We expect that to continue for now. But yes, in terms of waterborne cargoes, it's going to have to be the East that soaks up at least a majority of what is unsold. Don't think the East will be able to take everything, but at least 50 to 60% should be able to flow there.
Amrita, going back to demand destruction, so you say it starts, I think, at $150. Where does demand get destroyed first? Is it in Asia, or will they have access to the Russian oil? How does it play out?
Well, I think it's going to be Europe that's the worst affected and worst hit because it's both oil and gas. We've already seen very high inflationary environment in both Europe and the US, and that's where economic growth comes off first, and that's kind of where the biggest hit to consumers is. So it's Europe, then US. Asia, in some ways, of course, could benefit from slightly cheaper oil, particularly China and India, if they are able to buy these discounted cargoes.